The date is May 28, 1987. The location is a fortified bunker of the Soviet Air Defense Forces, the Protivozdushnaya Obrona, or PVO, near the town of Loksa in Soviet-occupied Estonia. This is the northern fringe of the empire, the razor-wire edge of the Cold War. The men inside this concrete box are the gatekeepers, the tripwire. Their entire existence is dedicated to one singular task: watching the sky for the end of the world. They are trained to recognize the signature of a B-52 Stratofortress, the terrifyingly fast spike of a cruise missile, or the high-altitude streak of an SR-71 Blackbird. Their system is the most expensive, dense, and redundant air defense network ever conceived by mankind. Thousands of interceptor aircraft, from the nimble MiG-23 to the brute force MiG-25 Foxbat, sit waiting on high alert. Tens of thousands of surface-to-air missiles, the SA-2 Seconds, the new formidable SA-10 Seconds, stand poised in concrete rings, forming a steel shield around the motherland. This shield is more than metal and rocket fuel. It is a promise. It is the Kremlin's guarantee to its people that the horrors of 1941 will never be repeated. It is the physical manifestation of Soviet power. And on this afternoon at 13:21 local time, that shield is about to be rendered an absurdity. An operator leans forward. A single unidentified target has appeared. Target 8211. It has crossed the invisible line from neutral Finland, out over the Gulf of Finland, and is heading directly for the Soviet coast. The initial reaction is not panic, it is annoyance, confusion. The target is slow. Impossibly slow. It registers at a crawl, barely the speed of a regional passenger plane. It is also flying low, a ghost in the clutter near the ground. This is not the signature of a NATO attack. It is the signature of nothing. A flock of geese, a dense weather anomaly, a malfunctioning Finnish sport plane that is dangerously lost. The operator flags it. The system, automated and interconnected, begins its cold, logical process. The target is not transmitting the required IFF signal, the identify friend or foe code. It is a hostile by default. The protocol is clear. A voice cuts through the quiet tension of the command room. A local PVO commander orders a visual interception. 2 MiG-23 Flogger jets, engines already screaming on the tarmac, blast into the sky. They are lethal, swept-wing interceptors designed to rip enemy bombers out of the air. Their pilots are the elite of the PVO. Within minutes, they are vectored onto the target. The lead pilot's voice crackles over the radio. What he reports makes no sense. He does not report a bomber. He does not report a spy plane. He does not even report a military-grade drone. He reports a small, white, single-engine propeller plane. A Cessna. The tension in the bunker does not break. It solidifies. It turns from the sharp adrenaline of combat to the cold, thick dread of the unknown. A Cessna. A toy. Here, violating the most sensitive airspace on the planet? What is this? Is it a probe? A psychological test? Is it some new, insidious American technology designed to look like a harmless civilian craft, only to detonate a small nuclear device over a command center? Is it a high-tech decoy, designed to make them look while the real attack comes from the Arctic? The generals on the line are paralyzed, not by fear of the object, but by fear of the decision. The world is still haunted by the ghost of KAL-007. Just 4 years earlier, in 1983, Soviet interceptors had shot down a Korean Airlines Boeing 747, killing all 269 people aboard, including a US congressman. The international condemnation, the fury, the humiliation, had been absolute. The incident had painted the Soviet Union as a paranoid, brutal regime that shot down passenger planes in the dark. Now, in the bright light of day, a confirmed civilian-style aircraft is in their sights. The MiG pilots are circling it. They ask for orders. What are your intentions? The order from the ground is hesitant. Do not engage. Force it to land. But the Cessna does nothing. It does not respond to visual signals. It does not change course. It just flies. This is the moment the machine breaks. The PVO is a system of districts. It is a vast, compartmentalized bureaucracy of air defense. And target 8211 is now approaching the line between the Leningrad Air Defense District and the Moscow Air Defense District. The commanders in Leningrad, frozen by the memory of KAL-007 and the sheer bizarreness of the situation, make a fateful decision. They do not shoot it down. They do not force it down. They pass it on. The target crosses the boundary. The radar operators in the Moscow district see a new blip appear, but it has been handed to them from a friendly district. The automated system, designed to prevent fratricide, sees the handoff and assumes the target must be a friendly aircraft on a mistaken flight plan, or a training exercise, or a search and rescue craft. It cannot be hostile, because if it were hostile, the Leningrad district would have destroyed it. The target is reclassified. Its hostile tag vanishes. Target 8211, the greatest threat to Soviet ideological security in a generation, is now officially designated friendly. If you're fascinated by the hidden events and technological clashes that decided the Cold War, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Cold War Impact for more deep dives into the stories that history books often miss. Click that button and let's uncover the truth together. The machine has swallowed the anomaly. The system has chosen to believe a lie because the truth is too insane to process. For the next several hours, the impossible event continues. The small, white plane, this phantom flies south. It flies over the city of Pskov. It flies near Lake Seliger, where multiple SAM batteries sit silent, their radars sweeping the sky for phantoms, while a real one drifts right over their heads. The plane is picked up and dropped by various local radars. Each time it is logged as a training aircraft, a weather-related anomaly, or a slow-moving object, non-hostile. One SAM battery tracks it for a time, but the commanders, seeing its low speed and the friendly handoff code, assume it's a civilian helicopter that has wandered off course. No one wants to be the man who wastes a 300,000 ruble missile on a crop duster. No one wants to be the man who starts an international incident. The Soviet Union, an empire built on the fear of invasion, has built a shield to stop a sword. It has no defense against a needle. The shield is not just the hardware, it is the men, it is the doctrine, it is the bureaucracy. And that bureaucracy is now grinding itself to a halt. The PVO is a beast designed to react with total annihilating force to a clear-cut threat. It is fundamentally, structurally, and psychologically incapable of dealing with a question mark. This single, slow-moving dot on a map is not just a plane, it is a virus entering the central nervous system of the Soviet military. It is exposing every flaw, the paranoia, the rigid command structure, the terror of personal responsibility, the deep systemic rot of a bureaucracy that prizes following the procedure over defending the nation. The operators, the pilots, and the generals who do see the object are trapped. They know something is deeply wrong. But what can they do? The system has told them it is friendly. To challenge the system is to risk your career. To shoot and be wrong is to be purged. To not shoot and be wrong, that is unthinkable. And so, the path of least resistance is chosen: do nothing. Pass the problem to the next man, the next district. The plane continues. It flies unmolested, a tiny white speck against the vast green and brown tapestry of the Russian heartland. It is heading for a destination that no one in the PVO could possibly comprehend. It is aiming for the very center of their world. The sun begins to dip lower. The men in the Moscow High Command are now aware that something is in their airspace, but they are searching for a ghost. They are looking for the real threat, the diversion, the second wave. They cannot, will not, accept that this slow-moving toy is the threat. The shield, the great multi-billion ruble promise, has failed. It has not been broken by a hypersonic missile. It has not been shattered by a wave of B-1 Lancers. It has been bypassed, humiliated. And the object that has done this ghost in the machine, is now approaching the suburbs of the capital itself. The final air defense ring, the one that protects the Kremlin, the Politburo, and the General Staff, is about to be tested. The world is about to change, not because of a bang, but because of a whisper. The final ring of Moscow's air defense is the most sophisticated on Earth. It is a dense forest of the newest SA-10 Grumble missiles, backed by hardened command bunkers and dedicated interceptor squadrons. This is the last shield, protecting the heart of the Soviet government. And as target 8211 approaches, this final shield also does nothing. The target is flying too low, it is moving too slowly, it has been passed down the line with a friendly code. The system, designed to stop a high-speed, high-altitude nuclear strike, literally does not have the parameters to classify this nothing as a threat. It is filtered out as ground clutter. A weather balloon. A traffic helicopter. At approximately 1830, the sun is low, casting long shadows across the capital. Muscovites are streaming out of the gum department store, heading home from work, and they look up. They see something that does not belong. A small white Cessna, motor buzzing, circles low over the Kremlin. It circles over the Spasskaya Tower, over the golden domes of the cathedrals, over the blood-red walls. On the ground there is no panic. There is only a vast collective dumbfounded stare. This is not an attack. This is a dream. A joke. A movie being filmed. People point. Some wave. The pilot circles again, looking for a place to land. He considers the vast open space of Red Square itself, but it is too crowded with pedestrians. He lines up his approach on the Bolshoi-Moskvoretsky Bridge, the wide bridge connecting Red Square to the south. He touched down. The wheels of a Western sport plane, which began its journey more than 500 miles away in Finland, roll to a stop on the cobblestones adjacent to St. Basil's Cathedral. For a full minute, nothing happens. The engine ticks as it cools. The pilot, a young man, climbs out. He is wearing a red jumpsuit. He smiles and begins signing autographs for the stunned, curious citizens who crowd around him, some asking where he's from, others offering him bread. Then, the militia arrive, and moments later, the black Volga sedans of the KGB screech to a halt. The spell is broken. The smile vanishes from the pilot's face. He is seized, bundled into a car, and spirited away to the infamous Lefortovo prison. The impossible event is over. The investigation and the nightmare for the Soviet state is just beginning. The first report reaches General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev within the hour. He is not just angry, he is incandescent. He is in the middle of perestroika, of glasnost, of delicate, high-stakes arms negotiations with Ronald Reagan. He is trying to convince the world that the Soviet Union is a modern, competent, and technologically advanced superpower. And a single toy plane just landed at his front door. The sound that echoes through the Kremlin is not the sound of sirens. It is the sound of Korea's ending. Gorbachev convenes an emergency session of the Politburo. The room is thick with a toxic fog of fear and blame. The military leadership is summoned. The head of the PVO, Marshal Alexander Koldenov, a decorated hero of the Soviet Union from the Second World War, is ordered to explain himself. He cannot. The scramble begins. It is not a hunt for a ghost. The plane is sitting in a government impound lot. The hunt is for something far more terrifying: the truth. The KGB's first chief directorate, the Foreign Intelligence Arm, is convinced this is a conspiracy. The pilot, a 19-year-old West German named Matthias Rust, is interrogated under blinding lights. They do not believe him. They cannot believe him. Who sent you? No one. I came for peace. Who trained you? I am a hobbyist pilot. What was your target? I wanted to talk to Gorbachev. The answers are so naive, so absurdly simple, that the KGB interrogators see them as proof of a brilliant, deep cover operation. This boy must be a psychological weapon, a sleeper activated by Western intelligence. The CIA, the West German BND. The British, someone. They rip the Cessna apart, panel by panel. They are searching for the real technology. Was there a sophisticated jamming pod hidden in the fuselage? A stealth coating on the paint? A set of advanced electronics that spoofed their entire defense network? They find nothing. They find a standard, off-the-shelf sport aircraft. They find some extra fuel tanks. They find a survival kit. The lack of evidence becomes, in itself, evidence of a deeper conspiracy. The technology must have been so advanced that it left no trace. The pilot must have been so well trained that he could withstand any interrogation. This is the only conclusion the Soviet mind can draw. The alternative, that a single, determined, and perhaps foolish teenager defeated their entire national defense system by pure dumb luck and bureaucratic incompetence, is ideologically, politically, and spiritually unacceptable. To accept that truth would be to accept that the entire system is a hollow shell. While the KGB hunts for spies, Gorbachev hunts for scapegoats. The purge is swift and brutal. Marshal Koldenov, the commander of the PVO, is publicly fired. He is humiliated, stripped of his titles, and forced into retirement. His entire life's work, his status as a war hero, is erased in an afternoon. The Minister of Defense, Marshal Sergei Sokolov, is also dismissed. Dozens of other generals, district commanders, radar operators, the men who made the calls, and the men who made no calls are rounded up. They are court-martialed, demoted, or expelled from the Communist Party, a move that effectively ends their lives in Soviet society. The PVO is decapitated. The investigation has found its culprits, incompetence, and failure. But the paranoia remains. The legend of Target 8211 is not that of a brave kid. It is the legend of a systemic ghost. The Soviet military has just proven, in the most embarrassing way possible, that it is blind. What if the plane hadn't been a Cessna? This is the question that haunts their secret meetings. What if it had been a B-1 Lancer, flying low, using the same slow profile? What if it had been a new generation of American cruise missile, painted to look like a civilian plane on radar? What if, instead of landing, it had detonated a 5-megaton warhead over the Kremlin? The investigation concludes that this was, without question, a planned NATO military intelligence operation. Its goal was to probe Soviet air defenses, to identify the gaps, and to psychologically humiliate the USSR on the world stage just before the next round of arms talks. The Soviet leadership convinces itself that Rust was a pawn, a useful idiot sent by a shadowy Western cabal. They believe they have uncovered the what, a NATO probe, even if they cannot prove the who. This wrong conclusion, this desperate need to find a complex, powerful enemy, is the only way they can process their failure. They believe they are reacting to a new, insidious American threat. The use of low-tech, slow-moving objects to bypass their high-tech, high-speed shield. They are hunting a phantom. They are preparing for the next slow-moving decoy. They have absolutely no idea what is already in their skies. They are hunting a ghost from the West, completely unaware that for more than a decade, a far more terrifying, far more advanced, and utterly invisible American ghost has been flying over their most sensitive military sites at will, running circles around their entire air defense network. The Rust incident was an accident, a humiliation. But the real American project, the one the Soviets don't know about, is a deliberate strategy, and it has been working perfectly. The Soviets are now looking in entirely the wrong direction, terrified of propeller planes, while the true predator continues its hunt, unseen and unchallenged. While the Soviet High Command tore itself apart, hunting for the spies who had supposedly sent Matthias Rust, the real answer lay elsewhere. It was not in a West German flight club. It was not in a CIA safe house in Bonn. The answer was in the middle of a dry, sun-scorched lake bed in the Nevada desert. The location: Area 50, 1, Groom Lake. A place that technically did not exist. The project, a secret so deep, so revolutionary, that its very concept bordered on science fiction. The Soviets were now looking for the wrong thing. Humiliated by a slow-moving propeller plane, their entire defense doctrine was being re-examined to counter low, slow targets. They were reinforcing watchtowers, training their pilots to identify civilian craft, and recalibrating their radars to pick up non-traditional threats. They were, in effect, brilliantly preparing to fight the last war. They were completely, utterly blind to the next one. While the PVO hunted for ghosts, in the absolute darkness of the Nevada night, a shape that was not a shape moved through the sky. It was not a plane. It was a collection of flat, black, knife-like angles. It was known to its pilots as the Hopeless Diamond. To the world, it would eventually be known as the Phone 117 Amperes Nighthawk. This was the true American solution. It was the physical manifestation of American dominance, built not on luck, but on a revolutionary idea. The idea was born in the 1970s, in the mind of a quiet Lockheed engineer named Dennis Overholser. He was working at the legendary Skunk Works, the secretive advanced development program responsible for the U-2 spy plane and the SR-71 Blackbird. The problem they faced was simple. Soviet air defenses were becoming too good. The PVO network, the one Matthias Rust had just accidentally proven to be a bureaucratic nightmare, was on paper a technological marvel. Its radars could reach higher, see farther, and its new SA-10 missiles could engage targets faster than anything before. The old American playbook of flying higher and faster, the entire philosophy behind the U-2 and SR-70, one was coming to an end. The Soviets were building missiles that could almost catch the Blackbird. The next generation would succeed. The Americans needed a new way in. Not over the shield, not under it. Through it. The Skunk Works team, led by the brilliant Ben Rich, revisited a forgotten piece of physics. What if a plane could be made invisible? Not invisible to the human eye, but invisible to radar. Every radar system in the PDVO, from the massive Tall King early warning arrays to the small Fan Song missile guidance radars, worked on a simple principle: bounce a radio wave off a metal object and catch the echo. The bigger and more rounded the object, the bigger the echo. A B-52 bomber was a barn door in the sky. The Skunk Works solution was radical. What if they built a plane that didn't return an echo? What if they designed a shape that, instead of bouncing radar waves back to the transmitter, scattered them away, like a shattered piece of glass scattering light? Using classified computer models derived from obscure Soviet technical papers, they began to design it. The result was ugly. It looked like nothing that had ever flown. It had no smooth aerodynamic curves. It was all sharp angles and flat panels, faceted like a diamond. The engineers joked that it looked like it would taxi about as well as a filing cabinet. It was inherently unstable. No human pilot could fly it. The only reason it could stay in the air was a revolutionary new fly-by-wire computer system that made thousands of micro-adjustments every second, essentially tricking the airframe into believing it was stable. The entire aircraft was coated in a top-secret, radar-absorbent material, a paint that was actually a complex layer of ferrite particles designed to soak up radar energy and turn it into microscopic amounts of heat. The project was codenamed Have Blue. The first prototypes took to the sky in 1977 in total secrecy. When the production model, the F-117, was declared operational in 1983, 4 full years before Rust's flight, the United States possessed a weapon the Soviets could not even imagine. This was American ingenuity at its most terrifying. It was not just a technological leap, it was a philosophical one. The Soviets, for all their power, were masters of imitation. They stole Western designs, the B-29 bomber, the Concorde supersonic transport, and reverse-engineered them brilliantly. They built bigger engines, stronger airframes, and faster missiles. The Americans at their best were masters of innovation. They didn't just build a better version of the old thing, they changed the rules of the game entirely. The F-117 was the perfect expression of this. It was designed for one mission, to be the silver bullet. On the first night of World War III, these invisible jets would slip through the PVO's multi-billion-ruble radar shield without triggering a single alarm. They would fly, unseen, directly to the command bunkers, the communication nodes, and the political leadership in Moscow. They would decapitate the Soviet Union before the war had even begun. So, in May of 1987, as the Politburo screamed at its generals about a Cessna, a squadron of invisible American phantoms sat ready on a tarmac in Nevada. They had already been flying for years. They owned the night. The Soviets were terrified by the implication of Rust's flight, that their shield was flawed. The Americans knew it was. They had built the key to unlock it a decade earlier. The humiliation of Red Square was a public spectacle, a farce. The F-117 was the silent, strategic checkmate. The gap between the two superpowers was not just about a single lucky teenager. It was about an entire generation of technology that one side didn't even know existed. The purge that followed the Rust incident was a classic Soviet solution: find the men responsible and replace them with new men who would not make the same mistakes. The PVO, sobered and terrified, went to work. They recalibrated their systems. They retrained their operators. They drilled for the low, slow threat. By 1988, they believed they had plugged the hole. The humiliation was in the past. Then, the first real shock came. It arrived not from the sky, but from a press release. On November 10th, 1988, the Pentagon released a single, grainy, black and white photograph. The American public was baffled. Soviet intelligence analysts were electrified. It was a thing that should not fly. It was a triangular shard of black, a collection of flat plates and bizarre angles. It had no tail. It looked like a child's failed paper airplane. The Pentagon officially designated it the F-117 Ampere's stealth fighter. The Soviet military's first reaction was skepticism. This was a trick, a piece of American propaganda. Disinformatia. It was designed to make them waste billions of rubles chasing a technological fantasy. It was an impossible object, a violation of aerodynamics. But the GRU Soviet military intelligence was not so sure. They had heard whispers. For years, their agents had collected rumors of invisible planes being tested in the Nevada desert. They had satellite photos of new, strange-looking hangars at Groom Lake. The grainy photo was not a bluff, it was a message. The first test came a year later, in December of 1989, Operation Just Cause, the American invasion of Panama. On the first night, two F-117, as were given a mission, dropped two 2,000-pound bombs on the Rio Hato airfield to stun and confuse the Panamanian garrison. From a purely tactical standpoint, the mission was a partial failure. The pilots, flying their first-ever combat mission, missed their targets. But to the Soviet GRU station in nearby Nicaragua, it was a terrifying success. The phone, 117 seconds, had flown into a hostile capital, navigated over an active, if primitive, radar net, and executed their attack. And not a single radar screen in Central America had ever seen them. They had appeared, dropped their bombs, and vanished. This was the confrontation. The impossible object was real. But the true shock, the moment the laughter of the Rust incident truly died in their throats, came just over a year later. January 17th, 1991, Baghdad, Iraq. A Soviet air defense advisor, a PVO lieutenant colonel, sits in a hardened Iraqi command bunker. He is one of hundreds of Soviet experts deployed to help Saddam Hussein operate the most formidable air defense network outside the Warsaw Pact. And it is formidable. It is a near-perfect clone of Moscow's own. It is an integrated system of French and Soviet technology. He is surrounded by radar repeaters showing the feed from Soviet-made Spoon Rest and Tall King early warning radars. He has direct lines to batteries of SA-2, SA-3 and SA-6 missiles. He has squadrons of MiG-29 Fulcrum fighters, the Soviet answer to the F-16 sitting ready on their runways. This network, he thinks, is impenetrable. The Americans, with their conventional F-15 seconds and F-16 seconds, will bleed. The air war begins at 2:30. The first wave of American aircraft is detected. Tomahawk cruise missiles, F-4G Wild Weasel anti-radar planes. The Iraqi gunners open fire. The sky over Baghdad lights up with a storm of anti-aircraft fire. The Soviet advisor watches his screens, calm and professional. The system is working. Then, at 2:51, the Nujaib Air Defense Sector headquarters, the central brain of the entire network, goes silent. The advisor blinks. He checks his feed. An instant later, the Sector Operations Center at Al-Taji, the other main command bunker, simply vanishes from the network. He looks at his own radar screen. It is still clear. There are the cruise missiles. There are the wild weasels on the periphery. There is nothing over downtown Baghdad. Then the feed from the central telephone exchange cuts out. Then the Air Force headquarters building explodes. Then the AT&T building, the primary communications hub, is gutted by a 2,000-pound bomb. The advisor is frantic. He is screaming at his Iraqi counterparts. Where is it coming from? Where are they? The Iraqi operators are terrified. They are pointing at their screens. There is nothing! Mafei Shai! Nothing! The advisor watches in pure, cold, paralyzing horror. The anti-aircraft guns are firing blindly, filling the sky with useless shrapnel. The SAM batteries are dark, their radars shattered in their concrete rings. The MiG-29 seconds are still on the ground, their runways methodically cratered by an enemy they cannot see. This is not a battle, it is an execution. An invisible enemy is flying at will, untouched, over the most heavily defended city in the Middle East. It is not carpet bombing, it is performing surgery. It is flying to a specific building, to a specific window, and putting a laser-guided bomb through it. And his multi-billion ruble, Soviet-designed, Soviet-trained, and Soviet-advised air defense shield is blind. It is deaf. It is dumb. This is the shock moment. This is the true humiliation. The Rust incident was a farce, a single, absurd failure of bureaucracy and nerve. This is a strategic catastrophe. Back in Moscow, the Soviet General Staff watches the same events unfold, live on CNN. They see Peter Arnett, broadcasting from the Al Rashid Hotel, describing the laser-accurate bombs striking their targets. They see the sky filled with the traces of their own exported AAA guns firing at phantoms. They know in that instant that their entire life's work is a lie. The shield they had spent trillions of rubles to build over 50 years is obsolete. The hopeless diamond from the grainy 1988 photo is not a bluff. It is the single most effective military weapon in history, and it has just rendered the entire Soviet military doctrine, a doctrine built on a massive, integrated air defense, worthless. The futile response begins immediately. The PVO and the Soviet research bureaus go into a panic. How do you stop a ghost? They pour every last resource of their collapsing economy into counter-stealth. They rush the development of their new flagship missile, the S-300 PMU, which they claim has capabilities against low observable targets. They dust off old, 1950s-era technology. They realize that very high-frequency, VHF, radars, the long-wave meter-band systems they had all but abandoned, have a theoretical chance. The physics of the F-117's design means it is optimized to scatter high-frequency targeting radars. It is less effective at scattering the massive, rolling waves of a VHF set. This becomes their new obsession. They build new VHF systems like the Nebo SVU. But it is a futile, desperate gesture. A VHF radar might be able to generate a vague blip of a stealth aircraft. It could tell a commander, there is something out there. But it was not a targeting radar. It was too imprecise. It could not provide the fire control lock needed for a missile. The Soviet system was an integrated chain. The VHF radar was the bloodhound, but it had no teeth. By the time it told the missile battery where to look, the high-frequency targeting radar would sweep the area and find nothing. The F-117 would be long gone, its bomb already on the way. The Americans had not just built a better plane, they had built a weapon that systematically dismantled the process of air defense. The humiliation of 1987 was a political one. The shock of 1991 was an existential one. It proved, definitively, that American dominance was not a matter of opinion. It was a physical, verifiable, and terrifying reality. The final verdict was not delivered in a political treaty or at a negotiating table. It was delivered in the cold, hard mathematics of the after-action report. During the 43 days of Operation Desert Storm, the Phone 117 Ampere's Nighthawk flew 1,299 combat sorties. It flew against the most heavily defended targets, in the most dangerous airspace, at the very start of the war. It was hunted by every radar, every missile, and every interceptor the Iraqis, and by extension, the Soviets could field. The killer statistic is this: 0. 0 Phone 117 seconds were hit. 0 were damaged by enemy fire. 0 were lost. The aircraft that was aerodynamically impossible had achieved a perfect record of operational invincibility. It had systematically blinded, deafened, and decapitated a perfect replica of the Soviet PVO. The most expensive shield in history had been rendered as useless as a sheet of paper in a hurricane. The humiliation of 1987 and the shock of 1991 were two sides of the same coin. The flight of Matthias Rust was the tragicomic prologue. It revealed a system that was psychologically and bureaucratically hollow. A system so paralyzed by its own rigid doctrine and terrified of personal responsibility that it could not stop a single unarmed teenager in a propeller plane. The flight of the Phone 117 seconds was the epic, silent conclusion. It proved the system was technologically bankrupt. This was the macro theme, the fatal flaw in the entire Soviet experiment. The Cold War was not just a battle of ideologies, it was a battle of systems of innovation. The Soviet Union was a masterpiece of imitation. It could steal a Western design, like the B-29 bomber, and, through the sheer, brutal force of its command economy, reverse engineer and mass-produce thousands of perfect copies, the Tu-4. It was a system built to scale. It was designed to overwhelm, but it could not, by its very nature, innovate. True innovation, the kind that produces a hopeless diamond, does not come from a 5-year plan. It does not come from a centralized committee. It comes from a garage. It comes from a skunk works. It comes from a small, decentralized team of brilliant, eccentric engineers who are given permission to fail, to break the rules, and to chase an idea that seems insane. The F-117 was the product of a system that embraced chaos. It was flown by a computer because no human could handle its inherent instability. The Soviet PVO was the product of a system that demanded order. It was a rigid, top-down hierarchy that collapsed the moment it faced a problem outside its doctrine, an impossible variable like a Cessna or an invisible one like the F-117. When Gorbachev faced the humiliation of Red Square, his solution was to purge. He fired the defense minister and the head of the PVO. He shot the managers. It was the only solution his system knew. Find the human failure and replace him. When the Americans faced the impossible problem of the Soviet air shield, their solution was not to build a better B-52, it was to build the F-117. They didn't just fire the managers, they changed the entire physics of the game. They made the PVO, its managers, its missiles, and its trillions of rubles utterly and completely irrelevant. The Rust incident was an embarrassment that cost careers. The F-117 was an existential threat that helped cost an empire. It was the full stop at the end of the arms race. It proved that the Soviet Union, for all its nuclear parity, was technologically defeated. It could not compete. It could not even comprehend the new battlefield. In the end, the Soviet Union was an empire haunted by two ghosts. The first was the ghost they could see, a small white Cessna circling the Kremlin in the afternoon light. It was a phantom of their own incompetence, a symbol of their bureaucratic paralysis. It was the mystery of how a shield so vast could be defeated by an object so simple. The second, and final, ghost was the one they could not see, a black, faceted shard moving at 500 knots through their darkest skies. It was a phantom from the future, a symbol of an intellectual and technological gap they could never hope to cross. It was the mystery of American dominance, made manifest. The Cold War was won not just by economic pressure or political will, it was won in the silent, invisible spaces on a radar screen. It was won by the system that could build a ghost, while the other could only hunt for them. The true power dynamic was never about who had the most missiles, it was about who, in the dead of night, truly owned the sky.